We need to step up and take that responsibility and pass this bill.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's right. A few years ago during the Clinton administration, when they took a balanced approach to deficit reduction, we did run surpluses. And with that, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Gentlelady from Texas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the distinguished member of the Budget Committee as well for the great work that he has been doing. As I listen to my friends discuss this question of being responsible, I want to at least announce breaking news that our friends in the other body have come up with a semi-solution on revenue and on the question of how we would cut. They are seeking to be responsible, and today in this body we are not. I heard a tutorial about the green light and the red light, of which if you are, as a member, you understand green is yes and no comes up red. What the red will mean is to stop the insanity, to stop the loss of our moral compass, the responsibility to pay our bills. What the red light will mean is that we, in fact, would be not paying the bills of our families. We wouldn't be paying Social Securities, interest rates would spike, the U.S. dollars would decline, and our credit would literally go out the door. That's what being without responsibility is, what we are planning to do. Then, if I could have the other one, please. Then we will lose the ability to pay our Medicare. And so don't be fooled by the green light tutorial. We frankly are going to lose our way. We'll close hospitals. We won't have the ability to provide for our seniors. And these are the very persons that my colleagues over here believe that they are helping. But the main point that I want to emphasize very quickly is that the Constitution of the United States already says that the validity of the public debt of the United States in the 14th Amendment, Section 4, shall not be questioned. Let me tell you today that a balanced budget amendment will destroy the United States, and it will not allow us to pay for those in need. Tap dance, losers club, bust the benefits. That's what this bill is. Tap dance, losers club, and bust the benefits.
Mr. Speaker.
That is what will happen to all of us.
Excuse me just a second. Members are advised to heed the gavel and consume only the time yielded by the managers of the floor. The gentleman from New Jersey.
And I thank the Speaker, and just reminding what the leader on the other side said, wondered whether members had actually read the bill. If members do read the bill, they understand that cut, cap, and balance, as provided before us, actually does those three things and allows us to pay the bills at the same time. And with that, I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida.
Gentleman from Florida.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, for the last 30 years, I have spent my life as a husband, a small business owner, and as a legislator. And one thing I've learned from this is that common sense is not so common here in Washington, D.C. As a husband, I know it would be irresponsible to buy a shiny new car or a new boat when my family couldn't afford to make their mortgage payment or their food payments. As a business owner, I know that when I didn't have enough to meet my expenses, I didn't raise revenues on my customers. I cut back my expenses. And as a legislator, I knew that within a balanced budget amendment, we could operate a state successfully. And in the state of Florida, we did that. You do not see Floridians running on the street, hungry and rioting. No, you see Florida living within its means because of a balanced budget amendment. Mr. Speaker, those opposed to this plan are frightened. They are frightened because they know that any cuts agreed to and deals aren't binding on a future Congress, and a balanced budget amendment is. They know that cut, cap, and balance brings real spending reductions today and will force government in the future to get an agreement of the whole family, the supermajority, to go into debt or raise taxes. A balanced budget amendment is common sense. The American people are watching, and their patience is wearing thin. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from New Jersey has 2.5 minutes left.
Gentleman's yielded 1 minute, please.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With a record debt level of $14.2 trillion, unemployment at 9.2%, and our spending habits out of control, Americans are searching for answers. They are searching for a plan that gives them real hope, a lifeline that will pull them out of the water and onto solid ground. The Cut, Cap, and Balance Act is that lifeline. It is a simple plan with guaranteed results. Raising the debt ceiling without serious spending reforms would be nothing more than a green light for more of President Obama's failed spending programs, more job-destroying tax hikes, and more crushing debt. The President's policies have us borrowing 40 cents on every dollar we spend and will make our children foot the bill. This will bankrupt America and jeopardize our children's futures. We must take extraordinary action to solve our debt problems. I urge my colleagues to support the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act. By making immediate cuts and bringing federal spending in line with historic averages, we can promote job growth, sustain our nation's economic viability, and ensure that the future of America is secure. Mr. Speaker, members of Congress, let's throw Americans a lifeline and vote yes on the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act. Thank you.
Our gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It does not throw Americans a lifeline to write into the Constitution of the United States a provision that creates a preference for cutting Medicare and Social Security over cutting subsidies for oil companies. With that, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New Jersey has a minute and a half remaining. 90 seconds.
Well, then I yield to the gentleman from Texas for a minute, and we'll see how he contains himself within a time, whether he needs the extra 30 seconds.
No, I
Gentleman
can
from Texas.
handle 1 minute. I do ask unanimous consent, Mr. Speaker, to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'm one of the original sponsors of the Tax Limitation Balance Budget Amendment under the Contract with America back in 1995. I've got one of the most conservative voting records in the House over the last 25 years. Common sense tells you that our budget problem today is a spending problem. It is not a revenue problem. And as the first law of ditch digging says, when you're digging a hole, in order to fill it, you've got to stop digging it deeper. President Obama's budget that he submitted to the Congress earlier this year does not have a budget deficit of less than $500 billion over a 10-year period. Cut, Cap, and Balance may have some technical issues with it, but the basic premise is sound. We need to spend less money short-term this year. We need to spend less money in the next 5 years, and we need a constitutional amendment that locks into place that we, over time, have to balance our budget every year unless there is some act of war or national emergency going on that two-thirds vote to override. Vote for this bill later this evening.
Mr. Time has expired. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New Jersey has 30 seconds. Gentleman from New Jersey.
Well, at this point, we'll yield 1 minute to the gentleman.
Well, the gentleman doesn't have a minute. Gentleman has 30 seconds.
South Carolina.
We'll get you more. We'll yield the remaining 30 seconds, and then.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, one problem I see from our colleagues across the aisle and the President is many of them have never signed the front of a paycheck. They've only signed the back of a paycheck. Now, as a small-town banker for 8.5 years, I practiced the 5 C's of credit: character, capacity, capital, collateral, and cash flow. If our country was held to these same standards, President Obama would never get the loan that he's asking for. I've struggled on this vote because of the $14 trillion of debt that our nation faces. President Obama has yet to come up with a plan that changes our spending trajectory, but this House has. Cut, Cap, and Balance. It's not just any plan, but it's revolutionary reform the way Congress spends money. We aren't $14 trillion in debt because we tax Americans too little. We're in debt because Congress has spent too much money. We don't have a revenue problem, folks. We have a spending problem. Reforms like a balanced budget amendment coupled with spending caps.
I ask unanimous consent to reclaim the time of Mr. Jordan for the next hour, in which case, for the next half hour.
No objection.
And then with that, I yield the gentleman remaining.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Are you seeking unanimous consent to control Mr. Jordan's time?
Yes, that's.
And does Mr. Jordan know that?
He's. Wait.
Oh.
Yeah. I withdraw that unanimous consent.
Excellent.
And Mr. Jordan will.
The gentleman Ohio now controls 30 minutes, and do you want to yield some time to our friend?
I would yield as much time to the gentleman from South Carolina as he needs.
The gentleman continues to be recognized.
Yeah. I want to thank the gentleman from Ohio for that. Folks, reforms like a balanced budget amendment coupled with spending caps and significant spending cuts are the types of revolutionary reforms that can prevent our children and our grandchildren from inheriting mountains of debt. Passing off the debt problem to them may be the easy way, but it is not the American way, and it's definitely not the Christian way. As President Reagan said, you and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but only for a limited period of time. Why then should we think that collectively as a nation we're not bound by that same limitation? We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I would point out that when Ronald Reagan was president, he raised the debt ceiling 17 times and specifically wrote to the Congress saying that failure to pay our bills would jeopardize the creditworthiness and trustworthiness of the United States. Let's not make that mistake. President Reagan didn't want to make that mistake. With that, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fattah.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Members speak with so much certainty about these things. It's not what we know that's the problem. It's what we know that just isn't so. Now, first and foremost, when we look at the Constitution of the United States and we look at Article 1, when we deal with the legislature, among the things, the items of powers granted to the legislature, the first one is to borrow on credit on behalf of the United States. Now, if the forefathers had no notion that we would be borrowing, they would not have granted this as the first enumerated power to the legislature. But let's deal with this more commonsensical misinformation that's been shared on the floor. They say, well, most families have to balance their budgets. No. Our families have mortgages. They don't wait till they get homeless to then go to the bank to try to get a roof over their family's head. They borrow so they can have a home. They don't wait until they need a car. They borrow the money to have the car. They say most businesses balance their budgets. The manufacturers in my district don't wait until their machines fall apart to recapitalize their business. So we need to stop dealing in falsehoods here and know that our country, the greatest superpower in the world, has to act in responsible ways. I encourage a no vote on this proposal.
Gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
I yield now to the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana, Mr. Landry.
For how long?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
How long?
One minute.
Gentleman from Louisiana.
Speaker, I rise in favor of H.R. 2560. We need to set the record straight. See, the President said we don't need a constitutional amendment to make government do its job. I don't see why he cares. He normally ignores the Constitution most of the time. He says he will veto this bill if it comes to his desk. Well, he can go ahead and veto it, but if he does, it is he who is choosing our seniors over everyone else. It is he who is choosing not to move America forward. Let's look at the record. House Republicans reluctantly passed the CR, which was diluted by him and the Senate. We passed a budget, something the Senate hasn't done in 811 days and something the last Congress didn't do in the last year of the last Congress. I'm sorry if they don't like our plan, but the President hasn't even put up a plan. He gives us no choice. So no, Mr. President, we don't need a balanced budget amendment, but you do. Therefore, I urge my colleagues to rise and support cut, cap, and balance. I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair has a plethora of advisors. First of all, members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair and not to others in the second person. Secondly, disparaging remarks directed at the President of the United States are inappropriate. The gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I would yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from West Virginia.
Gentlelady from West Virginia.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we're broke. Everyone from the small business owner in West Virginia to Standard & Poor's and Moody's are looking to Washington to solve this fiscal mess. We have a responsibility to demonstrate that we can responsibly raise the debt ceiling by changing the way Washington treats the taxpayers' dollars. The reason we're in over our heads is not because we're taxed too little. it's because we spend too much. The bill before us today, Cut, Cap, and Balance, is a tangible idea that demonstrates we have to pay our bills while making sure our future credit card statements are not budget-busting. If we want to protect our seniors and our grandchildren, encourage small business and create jobs, and safeguard the American dream, we need to get our economy back on track. That starts with living within our means. It's about time.
The lady yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I can inquire. I don't know where are we pretty close in time, so is this fine for us to keep going?
It's fine for you to keep going. The gentleman from Ohio has 28¼ minutes, and then after that we have Mr. Ryan with 30 minutes, and the minority has 43¼
Okay. I would now yield to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Holker.
Gentleman from Illinois. How much time? 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the American people know that Washington has a massive spending and debt problem that threatens not only our nation's credit rating, but our fiscal future. As a father of 4, I understand the threat our nation's fiscal crisis poses to them and to others in their generation. A child born today inherits more than $45,000 of debt, an astounding and terrifying statistic. It's clear that Congress needs to cut spending to ensure that America remains strong and prosperous for future generations. We must fight both the threat of downgrade and the threat of default. This common sense bill provides a guide to doing just that without raising taxes on job creators. We must force this government to live within its means, preserve our nation's sterling credit rating, and fight for a brighter future for our kids and our grandkids. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support the Cut, Cap, and Balance bill and send it to the Senate with the strongest possible support. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I still fail to see how it helps our kids and helps our seniors to write into the Constitution of the United States a bias in favor of cutting Medicare and cutting Social Security and cutting education before cutting special interest tax breaks. They would require only a majority to cut Social Security and Medicare, but 2/3 to get rid of special interest tax breaks for the purpose of reducing the deficit. That's why this is a question of priorities and question of balance. How do we reduce the deficit? How do we get it into balance? And with that, I yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney.
Gentlelady from New York.
I thank the gentleman for his leadership and for pointing out the priorities and the focus and the injustice and unfairness of the Republican proposal. At a time when Congress should be laser-focused on finding new ways to grow our economy and create American jobs, we find ourselves once again bogged down in producing the Republican version of waiting for Godot. We all know that this bill will never become law, that it is going nowhere in the Senate. Their slash and burn cuts have not created a single job for hard-working middle-class families. And in fact, most economists say that cutting too deeply, too strongly, would hinder economic recovery and could return us to a recession. For the average American family, the Republican proposal would mean a cut in their future prospects, a cap on their dreams for tomorrow, and balancing the budget on the backs of America's seniors, while they refuse to even look at cutting a special interest tax break or subsidy. They continue to subsidize companies that send our jobs overseas and subsidize record-breaking profits that our oil companies have, but they're subsidizing some of them to the tune of 40%. The Republicans have brought us to the brink of a national default in an effort to force the American people to accept their ideological agenda. I yield back.
His time's expired. Gentleman from Ohio.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before yielding 15 seconds to the gentleman from Indiana, let me just say this. This idea there's no chance this will pass the Senate, how do we know? We don't know until we send it over there. Maybe Harry Reid will have the courage to bring it up on the floor. We don't know. You know what? Every Friday night when they get ready to play the game, there's always one team that's favored, maybe heavily favored. but they still kick the ball off, they still play the game, and sometimes the underdog wins. In fact, anything of real magnitude that's ever happened, the conventional wisdom was it can't happen. So how do we know? I'm sick of this argument it can't happen in the Senate. We don't know that. If the conventional wisdom always won out, there wouldn't be a United States of America. This is one of those historic moments, and to say this thing can't pass the Senate is just plain wrong. Just plain wrong. And I yield now 15 seconds to the judge. I'd be happy to yield.
Question. As you know, this requires that we later pass a constitutional amendment. In fact, between now and August 2nd, we have to pass a constitutional amendment, which of course requires 2/3 in the House. We'll find out by later this evening whether or not this bill will even get 2/3 in the House.
I think it's going to get 218, and we'll send it to the Senate. At some point, we may be able to get 2/3. That's our whole goal.
No, but the point is that
this bill needs 218.
This bill says you can't continue to pay the bills unless between now and August 2nd or whenever we pass a constitutional amendment with the provisions that you have in here.
Well, let me ask
so it'll be a test today whether you can get the 2/3 to change the Constitution in the ways you're talking about.
Reclaiming my time.
The time's controlled by the gentleman from Ohio.
Reclaiming my time.
The chair would ask that.
Is the gentleman from Maryland suggesting that if there's some changes made to the balanced budget amendment in our legislation, that there would be 50 votes in the House to support it on your side?
I've already indicated that there's a conversation to be had with respect to what's a reasonable approach, but that is absolutely not what we're dealing with in this particular bill. As we've debated,
that's good to know that
you guys.
So what reclaiming my time. So what you're saying is you guys actually think the balanced budget amendment's a good idea and something we need.
We believe, as the President said, the best way for us to balance the budget is to get together and hammer out a deal sooner rather than later.
That's really worked well over the last 40 years. I yield 15 seconds to the gentleman from Indiana.
Gentleman from Indiana.
Mr. Speaker, the American people who may be paying attention to this whole debate may be a little confused, so let me just sum it up in one sentence. They want to spend more, they want to tax more, and we don't.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, if what the gentleman is saying is that we think we should get rid of a lot of the pork barrel spending in the tax code, whether it's oil subsidies or whether it's for corporate jets, we think we should get rid of some of that stuff for the purpose of reducing the deficit.
Well, gentleman, you for a question.
My problem is, the gentleman, we have a lot less time. Really, otherwise I would. If the Speaker would tell us how much time is on either side.
Quick question.
Excuse me. The gentleman from Ohio has 23 3/4 minutes, and the gentleman from Maryland has 40 1/2. And then there's an additional 30 minutes for Mr. Ryan on the majority side.
So, Mr. Speaker, I'll have to reserve, given
gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Ohio.
You have 1 minute to the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Gentleman from Wisconsin for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had a great debate here on cut, cap, and balance. All the points have been made, but as I sit here and listen to this debate, Mr. Speaker, I can't help but notice the hypocrisy. We're dealing with the other side, who is the advocate of 3 wars. They have a $1 trillion stimulus bill, a $1 trillion plus Obamacare, and they don't want to come to the table and have a conversation about how we're going to reduce spending in the U.S. government. And then we hear all this conversation about tax loopholes. Well, welcome to the party. Mr. Speaker, 2 months ago, we had a bill on the floor where we did away with all of these loopholes and reformed our tax codes, and they did nothing to support that reform. And now they demagogue our plan again. We hear about sending jobs overseas. Well, jobs are going overseas because we're taxing our businesses too much. When you tax them too much, they go other places, and when they go to places like China, India, Mexico, Vietnam, they take our jobs with them. I've heard a lot about Medicare. The only party in this House who has cut Medicare is the Democrat Party. $500 billion out of Medicare and an IPAB bill that is going to ration care for our seniors. I yield back.
Chair would again remind members to heed the gavel and consume the time yielded to them. The gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I would urge my colleagues to look at the Congressional Budget Office analysis of the impact of the Republican budget on senior citizens on Medicare. Essentially what they do is give seniors a raw deal compared to what members of Congress get themselves a raw deal in a big way. With that, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio.
Yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Fleming.
Gentleman from Louisiana.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, but for the President of the United States who serves today and a Democrat-controlled Congress over the last 2 years, we wouldn't be here today debating this. $3.8 trillion added to our debt and continuing on that same glide path. Mr. Speaker, we're here today because people across America, businesses, cities, states, all have to balance their budgets. The only game in this country, the only entity that doesn't have to balance its budget is the federal government, and that's what's ruined our economy. So all we're asking for in this bill is simply to immediately cut $111 billion in fiscal 2012, begin capping our spending rates, bringing it down to what's traditional, 18%, and then finally passing a balanced budget amendment that will finally put the restraints on this body, on the President of the United States, and certainly on the Senate, finally, so we will begin to doing the people's work and we'll allow this economy to flourish once again. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Maryland.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio.
Yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida.
Gentleman from Florida for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, every second of every day, Washington adds another $40,000 to our national debt. $40,000. In fact, by the time I finish speaking this sentence, our national debt will increase another $360,000. $360,000 in one sentence. We've reached the edge of a cliff, and it's going to take tough decisions and responsible leadership to eliminate this massive, massive debt. That's why today I rise in support of H.R. 2560, the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act of 2011. I support it because it's right, not because it's a Republican plan, but because it's common sense plan. It's the American family plan. Every American family cuts their budget, caps their budget, balances their budget with their own finances. So should Washington. That is not an unfair expectation. To argue against this is to argue against common sense. This is to say, as bad parents do as I say, not as I do. That is bad parenting, and that's also bad legislation. Unfortunately, over the past 3 months, our efforts to get serious about this crisis has been met with scare tactics. Enough of the political parlor tricks coming out of this city. It is time for us to do the job that the American people sent us here to do. Practice common walking around sense. That's what my grandfather taught me. That's good at home. That's good in the family. That's good in small business. And it is good enough for Washington, D.C. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, American families don't have the luxury of saying, if we don't get things 100% our way, we won't pay our family bills. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio.
Yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shep.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Our national unemployment rate is stuck at over 9%. We're currently borrowing 43 cents on every dollar that's spent around here. And our national debt stands at a staggering $14.5 trillion. The American people are demanding that we in Congress provide real solutions to these serious problems. The Cut, Cap, and Balance Act does just that. The debate today is not whether we should make good on our current obligations. We're all in agreement that we must pay our bills. But the spending in Washington is out of control, and it's got to stop. And we have to cap future spending, and passing a balanced budget amendment is critical to doing that. Because let's face it, historically, Congress has shown no will or the ability to stop its addiction to spending. Right now, back in my district in Cincinnati, hardworking Americans are making tough decisions, tightening their belts and making sacrifices to pay their bills. They expect us to do the same. Now let's do the right thing and pass this critical bill. I yield back.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio. Mr. Jordan.
Yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona.
Gentleman
Mr.
from
Flake.
Arizona, Mr. Flake, for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, this has been a fascinating debate. Members on both sides of the aisle stand and claim moral superiority when it comes to the debt that we've accumulated. There's plenty of blame to go around. When Republicans had majorities in both the House and the Senate, and when there was a Republican in the White House, we behaved badly. No Child Left Behind, the prescription drug benefit, bloated farm bills, swollen highway bills, bridges to nowhere, pork strewn everywhere. Let's be honest. We were headed toward this fiscal cliff long before the current president took the wheel. So here we are today. Mr. Speaker, it matters little who drove what shift. What matters is that we, both parties, are teetering on the fiscal cliff, getting ready to drag the country into the abyss. Fortunately, the 2006 midterm election sent many of us on a detour to the road to Damascus. And we're here today with a cut, cap, and balance plan that will put us back on sure financial footing. If the other side of the aisle has a plan that does not entail more of the same behavior that got us here, we should consider that plan. To date, we've seen no such plan. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this cut, cap, and balance legislation. Yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with a lot of what the gentleman said. I would say that the President has put a plan on the table to reduce the deficit by $4 trillion over about 10 years. It does it with $3 in spending cuts to $1 in revenue. That approach apparently was rejected by our colleagues, and I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Ohio.
And Mr. Speaker, you know why it was rejected? Because it's the same old game. It's exactly the same old game. Washington, the cuts come in the out years, the tax increases come now, and oh, here we go again. And yet there's certainly no specifics to it. It's the same old game.
Would the gentleman yield?
I yield now to the gentleman from Illinois. 1 minute. 2 minutes, whatever the gentleman. 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I sit back, and as we're watching the debate today, I've got to take my hat off to the gentleman from Maryland, who I think has the toughest job in the whole chamber, Mr. Speaker, and that is he's basically today the lawyer for the status quo. And that's a tough job. That's a tough argument to make. No matter how thoughtful the arguments have been on this side of the aisle that there's an urgency.
The gentleman yield?
I will at the end. I'll give you 30 seconds at the end.
Thank you.
No matter how poignant the arguments are that there's an urgency, no matter how jarring the unemployment figures are at 9.2%, no matter what the rating agencies are saying, the gentleman from Maryland is basically saying, no, there's a better plan. But I would submit that there is no better plan. There is no more balanced plan than cut, cap, and balance. Most Americans, as they're listening to this debate, they're hearing Washington, D.C. basically saying, hold the line. Defend the status quo. Lash ourselves to the mast, and we're going to get around the Cape, by golly, if we only just stick on the current course, where the current course is a failure. There's nobody that can defend the status quo with a straight face. And so what happens now is this majority has come up and said, okay, there is a pathway forward, and the pathway forward is immediate, short-term, and long-term. And I don't see what the argument is. I'm happy to yield to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman. If what you mean by protecting the status quo is meaning that I'm opposed to actually manipulating the Constitution of the United States to make it harder to reduce special interest tax breaks, yeah, I don't think we should change the Constitution that way.
I will graciously reclaim my time.
I
will graciously reclaim my time.
I thought you said 30 seconds.
It was in 30 seconds, and maybe it's all up.
If the gentleman
from Illinois controls the time.
And furthermore, they're doing it in an orderly basis. That is, amending the Constitution forthrightly and directly. And I think in closing, Mr. Speaker, my hat is off to the gentleman from Maryland, who no matter what the majority has come up with, always comes up with some argument that just defies logic. But I think most Americans, as they're listening to this debate, are saying, cut it, cap it, and balance it, and do it now, and I yield back.
Yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think what will defy the logic of the American people is why our Republican colleagues are going to write into the Constitution of the United States a provision that says a majority vote is needed to cut Medicare, a majority vote is needed to cut Social Security, a majority vote is needed to cut education, but you need two-thirds vote to cut subsidies for big oil companies. You need a two-thirds vote to get rid of subsidies for corporate jets. That is something that defies logic. You would also write into the Constitution a provision that says even if you balance the budget at 19% of GDP or some other level so that we can meet the needs of Social Security and Medicare, you wouldn't be able to do that. You would constitutionally prohibit that kind of balanced budget, one that meets the needs of Social Security and Medicare beneficiaries. That defies logic. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, what defies logic is a $14 trillion debt. And the Democrats' unwillingness to say, let's do what everyone else has to do, let's put a balanced budget requirement in the Constitution so that politicians have to do what they have to do in their homes. So we finally, obviously the other route didn't work. So what part of that, what part of $14 trillion don't you understand?
Would the gentleman yield? I understand.
What part of balancing the budget don't you understand?
I understand $14 trillion, and I
would yield. Mr. Speaker, I yield.
Excuse me. The time's controlled by the gentleman from Ohio. The Chair, understanding that there are passionate arguments on both sides, would ask all members to observe the decorum of the House and conduct debate accordingly. The gentleman from Ohio.
I thank the Speaker. I yield now to the distinguished Majority Whip, 3 minutes. The gentleman from California, Mr.
Gentleman from California for 3 minutes.
Well, I thank my colleague from Ohio and for his work on this legislation. Interesting to listen to the debate. And that's healthy. That's why we're on this floor. Defying logic. Interesting term. Defying logic when you think of a debt limit. What is a debt limit and why are we debating it? A debt limit to American people, so you understand, is to pay for the obligations that this government has already promised. So let's think about defying logic. The economy's tough, so I sat in this House and I watched this other side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, put together a stimulus bill where I even watched their own people stand to the floor and say they didn't even know if it would work. At the end of the day, defying logic meant $278,000 for every job that was created. Defying logic to the American public is that more people in America today believe Elvis Presley is alive than the stimulus created a job. Defying logic that we've gone 28 straight months with unemployment above 8%. Defying logic is to continue this pattern. But today we have a debate. Today we have a choice. Today we could take a new path. I understand why so vigorously you fight this, because it would be a change to America. It would change the direction. And the one thing I would ask is, when will the assault on the American people stop? That would be defying the pattern of where we're going to go. So I want to ask you one thing. We ask in this bill to cut, where you had government spending, just discretionary, gone up 84% in the last 3 years. To small business, that would be quite odd that they weren't able to do that. That we're going to cap it so it can't grow out of control. And then we're going to ask for a balanced budget that 49 states either have that or a statute. Because what I want to say today is a new path. It's not a path of repeating the mistakes, it's a path to a new future. And when you think of a balanced budget and you question whether it would pass, do you know 16 years ago we came 1 vote shy in the Senate? It passed this body with fewer people on this side. That meant people on the other side of the aisle voted for it. There's some of the people in your leadership who have voted for it. Now I want you to think for one moment to the American public, and I want them to imagine. Imagine had we gotten that 1 vote. the debate today would not have taken place. The debate today wouldn't be about $14 trillion. The debate today wouldn't be that we had to change the path. The debate today would be about the future of this country. What do you think would we be debating? What investments we would make to continue to make this country strong? What ability we could grow with our businesses, and it wouldn't be about unemployment? So I want to hearken back to a former president who said we could go to that shiny city on the hill. My charge is for this body to join us on that climb, because this is the first step, and when we get there, we will recharge that light so this country burns brighter with freedom and liberty than it has in times before, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are some things that we want to change, and there are some things we don't want to change. One of the things we don't want to change capriciously is the Constitution of the United States of America. And I think many of us think it's a corruption of the Constitution to write in provisions that say you can only balance the budget the way the Republicans want to balance the budget. You can only do it by capping things at 18%, even if that means deep cuts to Social Security, deep cuts to Medicare. We think it's a corruption of the Constitution to write into the founding document a provision that says it's easier to cut Medicare and Social Security than corporate tax breaks. That in here, we keep hearing 49 out of 50 states. 49 out of 50 states do not write those kind of provisions into their state constitutions. A very few do, and for good reason. They're bad ideas. They're bad ideas now, and they will be bad ideas in the future, which would constrain a Congress from balancing the budget in a way that reflects the will of the American people. I reserve the balance of my time.
Time reserved. Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I would just add 38 of those 50 states would have to agree to this before it would become the Constitution would be amended. So the gentleman can say, oh, we're going to write this in. The states get to decide this. That's the other part of this equation. Mr. Speaker, I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy.
Gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the gentleman from Ohio for yielding, for his leadership on this and so many other issues. Mr. Speaker, the President says he wants to do a big deal. He says he wants to do something transformative. He wants to do something that will echo in eternity, and he's willing to risk his political career to get it done. History tells a very different story. In 2006, Senator Barack Obama joined 47 Senate Democrats in voting no on raising the debt ceiling. This, the first post-partisan president, cast a decidedly partisan vote in joining every single one of his colleagues in saying no to raising the debt ceiling. Did calamitous have a different definition in 2006? Was reneging on your debt somehow more palatable in 2006? Was the apocalypse not blowing in 2006? In 2007 and 2008, when again this body voted on raising the debt ceiling, the President, who was a senator from Illinois, was absent for both votes. Fast forward to President Obama. He's proposed a budget that raises this debt by trillions of dollars with no spending cuts. And then he famously invites our colleague Paul Ryan to the White House to lecture him on sensitivity and entitlement reform while offering absolutely no plan whatsoever of his own for entitlement reform. And then he said he wanted a clean debt ceiling increase, free from the nuisances of spending cuts and entitlement reform and personal responsibility. How do you go from voting no on raising the debt ceiling to saying you want a clean increase in the debt to now saying you want to do something transformative that echoes in eternity? Mr. Speaker, the President says he has a plan. Forgive our skepticism. I'd like to see the plan. I prefer cut, cap, and balance over punt, pass, and kick.
Gentleman's time's expired. The Chair would congratulate both floor managers, as we're at 38 3/4 minutes on the majority side and 38 minutes on the minority side. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran.
Gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I haven't read Ayn Rand for 45 years, so all I have as a reference point is what I've observed over the last 20 years in this body. I remember when we were trying to pull out of the last recession in 1990, and George H.W. Bush called the leaders of both political parties together. They came up with a compromise. They raised revenue and they cut spending, and they started to pull us out of the deficit. The economy started rebounding. President Clinton followed suit. And in fact, he raised rates to 39.6%. Now, we heard at the time all of these arguments that you can't do that. You can't raise new revenue because it's going to cut jobs and so on. Well, the reality is, and granted, not one Republican vote was cast to do that, but what happened? We know what happened. 20 million jobs were created. We had surpluses. We had the strongest economy in modern history. We reduced welfare. We grew the middle class. Home ownership increased. And we handed over a surplus, a projected surplus, $5.6 trillion. In fact, this year, we'd have paid off our public debt. And you know what happened, too, to those who paid at that highest rate of 39.6%? They brought home more after-tax income than in any prior time in American history. It worked. And now your party comes in with this attitude we've been hearing about all day. You drastically cut taxes. You insured a debt. And in fact, just this spring, you voted for a Republican budget that increased the deficit by $8.8 trillion, from $14.3 to $23.1 trillion over the next 10 years. But now you don't want to pay for it. That's what happened during the Bush administration. We didn't pay for anything. We didn't pay for tax cuts. We didn't pay for wars. We didn't pay for expansion of Medicare. That's why we're in the hole that we're in. Alan Greenspan said, restore the Clinton tax rates. Every Republican voted to let the Bush tax cuts expire in 2011. Do it. Be responsible. Pay off our debts. Let's get back to first world status. Thank you.
Members are again reminded to address their remarks to the chair and not to others in the second person. Gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to yield the balance of controlling our time to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan, who will also take over the final 30 minutes.
Without objection, the gentleman from Wisconsin will now control 38 3/4 minutes.
Thank you.
You can do it.
And the chair would recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin. Mr. Ryan.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Bigger.
Gentlelady from Illinois.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill. It's no secret that the $14.3 trillion debt poses an extraordinary threat to our financial future, and extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. The Cut, Cap, and Balance Act would finally end the fiscal uncertainty and force the federal government to put the interests of the taxpayers first. Our colleagues across the aisle claim that this plan goes too far by restricting future borrowing. But the reality is that this bill is simply caps spending at the same sustainable rate as past generations, about 20% of GDP, a post-World War II average. For too long, government has spent the taxpayer into a debt they cannot afford. Cut, Cap, and Balance would show our creditors, our competitors, and the American people that we are willing to make tough choices needed to restore confidence and growth in the United States. Mr. Speaker, it's time to cut the spending and give the American businesses the certainty and stability they need to create jobs. I yield back.
Well, he's coming back.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Platts.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I rise today in support of H.R. 2560. It is important for the President and Congress to reach a final agreement on the debt ceiling that helps to restore fiscal responsibility in Washington, honors America's obligations, and puts our nation back on the path to prosperity. It is clear that our economy will continue to struggle until Washington demonstrates the ability to get our spending and our debt under control. And as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, has stated, our national debt is the biggest threat to our national security. The Cut, Cap, and Balance bill before us addresses our nation's spending and debt challenges in a manner that stops delaying hard decisions. We immediately cut spending by over $100 billion. We cap spending in future years at less than 20% of GDP and send a balanced budget amendment to the states for ratification. At $14 trillion and counting, our national debt currently is quickly approaching 100% of GDP. The federal government is borrowing 40 cents of every dollar it spends. America cannot continue on this unsustainable fiscal path. The full faith and credit of the United States government depends on Congress acting. I urge a yes vote and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield a minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I rise in opposition to the drastic cuts to Social Security and Medicare and other crucial federal programs that this Cut, Cap, and Balance Act would force on the American people. The Cut, Cap, and Balance Act takes our nation closer to default by holding the debt ceiling hostage until Congress passes a constitutional amendment to limit federal spending to 18% of GDP. The last time federal spending was below 18% of GDP was 1966. Even under Ronald Reagan, the federal spending averaged over 22% of GDP. There is almost no conceivable way to revert federal spending back to the 1960 levels without sharp cuts in every program, including Medicare and Social Security. In order to reduce federal spending to 18% of GDP, every federal program, including Social Security and Medicare, would need to be cut 25%. Faced with the need to increase the debt ceiling in 1987, President Reagan called on Congress to raise the ceiling and said failure to do so would threaten those who rely on Social Security and veterans' benefits, create instability in the financial markets, and will cause the federal deficit to soar. It's funny, I agree with President Reagan.
Expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Speaker, this time I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Hurt.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, today I rise in support of H.R. 2560. We are in a spending-driven debt crisis that continues to stall job creation, passes a crushing financial burden onto our children, and affects all 5th District Virginians. Since President Obama took office, our national debt has increased by $3.7 trillion, raising our current total debt to an unacceptable $14 trillion. And now, after 2.5 years of reckless spending, the President is asking that we raise the debt ceiling once again. But we have yet to see any concrete plan from this administration to help rein in the out-of-control government spending that has brought us to the brink of a debt crisis. So the House is once again leading and delivering on the message sent by the people of Virginia's 5th District to change the culture in Washington and end the government spending spree by putting forth a common-sense proposal that will cut, cap, and balance federal spending and force Washington to live within its means. Now is the time to put in place effective spending reforms to reduce our debt and deficits, return certainty to the marketplace, and preserve the American dream for our children and grandchildren. I thank the gentleman, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished Democratic leader, Ms. Pelosi.
Leader Pelosi is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I commend him for his tremendous leadership as our ranking Democrat on the Budget Committee, for bringing to that debate and that discussion at the table the values of the American people and the concerns that they have as they sit around their kitchen table. They are concerned that this Saturday will mark the 200th day of the Republicans attaining the majority in the House of Representatives. And yet today, another day goes by when we do not have a jobs bill on the floor. Indeed, we should have a jobs bill. This isn't a jobs bill. We should be working together to lower the deficit, to grow the economy, to create jobs, and we should be doing so in a balanced, bipartisan way. Instead, we have before us what is called the Republican plan to cut, cap, and end Medicare. This legislation is the Republican budget that was voted on earlier this year all over again. Wildly unpopular among the American people, the Republican budget again ended Medicare, made seniors pay more for less, while it gave tax breaks to big oil and corporations sending jobs overseas, made kids pay less for their education while it gave tax breaks to the wealthiest people in our country. As our Republican colleague has said, Congressman Jim Jordan, chairman of the Republican Study Committee, which is the source of this budget, he said on Sunday, this legislation basically mirrors the budget proposal that the House passed this year. And indeed it does. If summed up in one sentence, it ends Medicare, making seniors pay more while giving tax breaks to big oil and corporations sending jobs overseas. Furthermore, economists believe that the result of this legislation will be the result of the loss of 700,000 jobs. This legislation harms the middle-class families, but don't take my word for it. Nearly 250 national organizations oppose this legislation, saying, quote, it would almost certainly necessitate massive cuts to vital programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, and lead to even deeper cuts than the House-passed budget. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you about, I heard the previous speaker say we have to think about future generations as we go forward in this debate. And indeed, I agree. And for that reason, I called young people to my office over and over again, most recently last week, a large group of college students, some just newly graduated, and I said, you know, your name is used at the table of the debt reduction. Your name is used at the table that we owe this to future generations. I'd like to know with you as a member of the next generation, as a leader of the next generation, what do you think about what's going on at the debate table, the discussion table in the White House? What do you think of that? What values do you want me to bring from your generation to that table? With great wisdom, they talked about the fact that the education was central to their success and to America's competitiveness now and in the future. They talked about jobs. They said, please don't have the cuts in the legislation deter job growth and growth of the economy. They said, please don't harm Medicare and Medicaid because that's very important to our families. In fact, for many of our families, that enables them to afford our ability to go to college. We just wouldn't make it without that. They talked about, actually one other thing they talked about was we want to share in reducing the deficit. We believe that everyone has a responsibility to do so. But we want our voices to be heard, and we are concerned with voter suppression now around the country, that barriers will be thrown up that will hurt our participation in the electoral process. So when I went to the White House, I spoke about that. But yesterday I met with high school students, maybe well over 100 high school students. I asked them the same question. They had similar answers. They also said, tell them if they care about the future generations. They should care about our education. They should care about the budget deficit. They should care about jobs. They should also care about the environment, because the condition of the environment is important to us. But anyway, going back to those college students, that day I went to the White House. I told my colleagues, the President, the Vice President, and our Democratic and Republican colleagues, what those college students said about education, for example. And then I listened to the discussion and I thought, who is going to tell the children? Who is going to tell the children that at this table the suggestion is made that young people should spend $36 billion more, $36 billion more for interest on their student loans so that we can reduce the deficit, but not touch $37 billion, almost the same number, $37 billion in tax subsidies for big oil? Who's going to tell the children that that is what the values are that are being proposed by the Republicans at that table? $36 billion more charged to students, $37 billion as a gift to big oil. But don't touch that to reduce the deficit. It's stunning. It's stunning to me. So as we use the name of the next generation and what we owe them and what they expect as they come out of school, or what they need in order to afford school, in some cases that increase in the cost of interest payments will make it prohibitive, not more expensive only, prohibitive for young people to go to school. One young man said to me yesterday, high school, he said, I just graduated from high school. I'm the top of my class. I had great grades and scores and everything. But I can't afford to go to college. I can only go to the community college in my town because I can only afford to be close to home and go to a community college. So please, and whatever it is you do, don't hurt community colleges. But isn't that, and community colleges are wonderful and they do a great job for our country and the education of our children, the training of our workers and the rest. I had the privilege of speaking at the graduation, the commencement ceremony in San Francisco Community College last month, so I value what they do. But this young man had no choice. Had no choice because the cost of other education to him would be prohibitive, and again, because of the economic situation, he had to stay close to home. So let's listen to these people whose names we use, the next generation, the young people. We cannot heap mountains of debt onto them. Indeed, we shouldn't. And indeed, we didn't. When President Clinton was president, he took the deficit that he inherited into a path of fiscal soundness, into a path. 4 of the 5 of his last budgets were either in surplus or in balance. You've heard that over and over again. Came in a $5.6 trillion trajectory into surplus, only to be reversed by President Bush with his tax cuts for the rich, his giveaway to the pharmaceutical industry, and not paying for the wars. Took us on a trajectory of a swing of $11 trillion, the biggest swing in this fiscal situation in the history of our country. And that's the path we're on. I didn't hear anybody on the Republican side say boo, boo, when the president was taking us so deeply into debt. And every time we stepped up to the plate and lifted the debt ceiling because that was the right thing to do. Much has been said, if we don't lift the debt ceiling, what that means to our economy. We hear sounds from the tables in boardrooms about what it will do to the stock market, the credit markets, what it will do to the fiscal soundness of our country, our reputation overseas, and that's very important. But not only important is what is said around the boardroom table. What's important as to what this means around the kitchen table for America's working families. American families could soon see an increase in their cost of mortgages, car loans, credit cards, and student loans. Social Security and veterans checks could be held up. Stock prices, which are important to our economy, could fall with a direct hit on families' 401k, pensions, and savings. It would be a job destroyer, heaping more economic insecurity on America's families and the concerns they have about the education of their children, the health of their families, the security of their retirement around that kitchen table. Rather than making progress on the debt limit to prevent these widespread consequences for America's middle class, this legislation takes us backward. throwing up further roadblocks to increasing the debt limit. Mr. Speaker, we still have time to come together in a bipartisan and balanced way for a grand bargain that would ensure our nation meets its obligations while working toward a long-term plan to reduce the deficit, create jobs, grow the economy, and strengthen the middle class. Let us recognize that the best way to reduce the deficit is to get the American people back to work. Let us do as the President called upon us to do, to outbuild, out-educate, out-innovate the rest of the world, to win the future by creating jobs. And together we can keep America number one. I see my distinguished friend from Indiana is here, and I heard his one-sentence summation earlier. I won't repeat it, but I'll give you my one-minute summation on this. This legislation ends the Medicare guarantee, making seniors pay at least $6,000 more while giving tax breaks to big oil and corporations sending jobs overseas. I hope that some of our Republican colleagues will do what they did before and voted against this budget plan. A majority of Republicans voted against this budget plan when it came to the floor the day of the Ryan budget. I call upon all of us to do the right thing for the next generation and vote no, and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady.